Now that we're in general election season, it's time to meet yet another candidate for a general state office. Welcome to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. Good Monday evening to you. John Carlevale is my guest tonight. He's an interesting guy. He has been around the scene for quite some time. He's a former educator. He's a guy who's got, I think, brilliant ideas on what ought to be done with the Secretary of State's office. The question is, will he have the resources to compete with Nellie Gorbea, the Democratic primary winner, who actually upset Guillaume de Ramel in the September primary. She's a former Deputy Secretary of State, so he's got his hands full in this campaign, but I think you'll like him. Whether you vote for him or not is up to you. Really, Dan? Monday. Always punchy on a Monday. Let's go to the rundown and check out what's going on. Nothing but contradictions. Our foreign policy is nothing but contradictions, and now the president's admitting that, which doesn't make you very confident, does it? How much does it cost? I'll buy it. Sorry. I asked that question to a mayoral candidate today and got no answer. It was very frustrating. Debate tomorrow night. Speaking of mayoral candidates, yes, Providence mayoral debate produced by Eyewitness News on Fox Providence. It's going to be a dandy. We'll talk about it. And yeah, you know, when America loses again, it starts to get a little catty afterwards. And finally, it is, right? It is. Tell me it is. All right, let's dig in. Yeah, on this concept of contradictions, headline here. So the president talks to 60 Minutes and his pal Steve Croft, and even the subheadlines here in the Journal get this. The president acknowledges that there are contradictions in U.S. battle against extremists. And not only are there contradictions, because it's hard to remember who's fighting who for what, and the enemy and my enemy is my friend, sort of, but not really, and who knows, and all of that. Now the president responding to questions like, Mr. President, you called ISIL, the JV, less than a year ago. What up with that? CBS has kind of a roundup.
On 60 Minutes Sunday, President Obama acknowledged the U.S. misjudged the threat from ISIS.
I think our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria.
To defeat ISIS, the president says a competent ground force must battle the militants, but he has ruled out the use of American troops. House Speaker John Boehner believes U.S. forces may eventually have to hit the ground.
We have no choice. These are barbarians. They intend to kill us. And if we don't destroy them first, we're going to pay the price.
There are 1,600 American advisors and special operation troops in Iraq.
Wouldn't it be nice if you had a president who said, you know, my intel community was a little slow on the stick, but the truth of the matter is it's on me? Or a president who doesn't even throw the intel community on the bus and just say, you know what, the idea that we underestimated ISIL is on me. The president ought to try that every once in a while. It's kind of like Fonzie. Remember when Fonzie couldn't say I'm wrong? Viewers under the age of 50 don't get that. Jess, you don't get that at all. You're a Happy Days fan?
Well,
not a fan, but she gets it. That's the first time Jess and I have ever connected on a cultural issue. That's very exciting to me. All right, next item. Let's go. How much does it cost? I'll buy it, but you got to know how much it costs. Here's a picture I took on my own field reporter. On Twitter, Elorza for mayor reintroduced himself at his own old elementary school. That's my photography. I'm pretty good there. Anyway, Jorge Elorza, candidate for mayor, goes on and on and on about his priorities, including hiring 100 new police officers during his term. I asked him no less than 4 times at this press conference, how much does it cost? Here are a lot of the answers.
The only way we're going to get out of the mess that we're in at City Hall is by creating jobs and growing the tax base. The most important responsibility that any mayor has is keeping the residents of Providence safe. Nothing else matters unless people feel safe. Raising taxes is not an option here in the city. The only way that we're going to get out of the mess that we find ourselves here in the city is by growing our tax base, by creating jobs, and turning around our economy here in the city.
Not a single specific answer. I said, listen, he says, I'm going to go out and look for grants. Well, anybody that's followed the history of funding for police officers knows that even if the federal government gets into a grant subsidy program for hiring cops, they generally give you 100% 1 year, 75%, 50%, 25%, and down to nothing. So you've got to be able to budget your own police officers. If we're going to grow the budget by 100 cops, let me ask you this. If we could have afforded them yet, I mean, it's, up until this time, why wouldn't we have them? The only thing I can say about Jorge Elorza is that he had a pretty poignant commentary on his one Providence, and I thought that was kind of interesting. You'll probably hear about that in a debate tomorrow night. And for the first time, he had a public session, a lengthy one, some 40 minutes or so, and did not mention Buddy Cianci once. That's probably a pretty smart thing for him, especially since I've offered that unsolicited opinion and advice on multiple occasions, including directly with him. Speaking of the Providence mayoral race, the big debate tomorrow night, this is, I'm guessing, much anticipated amongst folks in the city and outside the city. We have Fox Providence hosting the Journal and Eyewitness News production of a mayoral debate with, yes, you may have seen him on the left and heard of him before, Buddy Cianci, Jorge Elorza in the middle, and Dan Harrop, the Republican, who's got like 6% of the vote so far, but who may play a pivotal role after these debates. I'm not so sure he's going to stay in, even though he says he will. Ought to be a dandy tomorrow night, again, 7 o'clock on Fox Providence. Now, moving on to bigger and better things, other matters. Yeah, so America loses again to the Europeans. And here was the headline in the paper today. I have not seen this press conference yet. I read about it. My DVR, I forgot to set. That's not proper English. I forgot to set my DVR, but a friend of mine told me that that's exactly what happened, and it's kind of like a throw under the bus type of thing for the famous Tom Watson by the so famous Phil Mickelson. You know, tension is created when these guys lose. Of course, they lost because they couldn't do a thing in the foursomes competition. You know the three ways they play in the Ryder Cup, right? There's four ball, where two guys are on one team on America's side, two guys are on the European team, and the best score on a hole is the score that counts. You know, playing your own ball. The foursomes is where, okay, Jess and I are on the same team. I hit my drive, then Jess hits the next one, then I hit the next one, then she hits the next one until we put the ball in the hole. Europe won 7 of 8 of those matches. My wife and I play better foursomes than America did. They got some work to do. Mickelson's claim is that they need a pod system where 4 guys hang out with each other, eat with each other, practice with each other, play with each other, have their own mini captain, and it builds a kind of, I don't know, environment for winning. Paul Azinger did it in 2008, last time we won. Next captain, better get back to that, or just get Paul Azinger again, I guess. And finally, what do we have here? Tell me. It's over, right? Was it over when the fat lady sang? Or was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Germans, shut up, he's on a roll. Derek Jeter finally exits. He was ready. What, are you kidding me? I'm an avid Yankee fan. I was ready. He said some very nice things at the end.
I had a blast. Listen, I got an opportunity to do what I wanted to do, the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. And, you know, I know that not a lot of people can say that. So I've been fortunate, but I've had fun. And there isn't a thing I would change. I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, I would change and we'd be in the playoffs, or I would change and we would have won more championships. But I wouldn't change it because, you know, this is what I've wanted to do.
I don't even have the energy to talk about the commercialization of his retirement and how long it went. I didn't watch any of the 3 games in Boston this weekend. I couldn't do it. Well, although that Thursday night finish at Yankee Stadium was poetic, profound, and for me, the punctuation for his great career. Congratulations. What happens if what if they had made the playoffs? This might be the first time ever I feel relieved the Yankees didn't make the playoffs. I sound like a curmudgeon, but enough already. All right, when we come back, John Carlevale. He's running for Secretary of State. I think you'll like him. Stay with us. Welcome back in. My guest has this opponent to face in the general election.
As I talk to people one-on-one, and I talk to them about the office and how much I love that office and what I think it could be doing today and tomorrow, they get it. They get that I'm ready to lead the office on day one and that I want to make government work for everyone.
Nellie Gorbea was the surprise to many victor in the Democratic primary for Secretary of State, beating Guillaume de Remel. You have to face off against Nellie Gorbea.
Yes,
Mr. Carlevale, are you looking forward to that?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me back.
Oh, well, look, it's it's what we do here. But it's always a pleasure. Let's talk campaign strategy while we're talking Nellie Gorbea. She comes off the momentum. She's a Democrat. We know how the built-in advantages are there for Democrats. So tell me, what is your strategy?
Well, it's very simple, Dan. When I talk to voters of this state, especially when I talk to folks that are registered Democrats, they are astounded by the fact that she wants to repeal the voter ID law. And they just scratch their head. They say, I don't get it. Why would anyone want to do that? Rhode Islanders appreciate how important the voter ID law is and that it is in fact doing what it was designed to do. And it's very simple. It prevents, excuse me, Dan, it prevents people from representing themselves as someone else and voting in their place. And as you know, this actually happened in 2010 to members of the General Assembly, and that's what prompted the General Assembly to pass the voter ID law, and it became effective in 2012. And in 2012, of the provisional ballots that were cast, 51% of those were not counted. So people get that the voter ID law is doing precisely what it was intended to do, yet...
She says it's a solution without a problem.
That is a catchy little term that has no merit.
All right, well, I'd love to see you tangle with her on that particular matter here at our invitation, so I'm guessing that you'll do that. She seems like a good egg, and I'm hoping that she'll come in and do that with you. I'm sure she'll be here individually before the end of the election season to share more thoughts on that. So, voter ID is your linchpin to victory?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you think that's enough?
Oh, it's absolutely not enough, Dan, but it's an important feature because, again, Rhode Islanders are so profoundly in support of the voter ID law. They get it.
Okay, so how are you going to get that message out? It's the one thing to be right, it's another thing to let everybody know that you're
That's
right,
true.
right?
I'm meeting people, I'm on shows like this, I'm doing radio interviews.
But you get no money?
And it's coming in, Dan, not as much as I would like to have it come in, but it's trickling in, and I think I'm going to be able to have an ad campaign.
It's a little late in the game to be thinking that you're going to have an ad campaign.
Well, I have
right?
one ready.
You have one ready. You just need to pay for it.
Right.
Right? Tell me how hard it's been. Has it been hard to raise money?
It's been more difficult than I anticipated, but as you pointed out, I was very late starting.
Right. Is that because people are unenthused about the Secretary of State's office amidst all of the noise in the governor's race and now the mayor's race that kind of sucks the air out of the room these days?
I can't honestly pinpoint what the problem is, but interestingly enough, Dan, I received a call Sunday from someone who heard me on your show, by the way, and she went to my website and looked it over and said to me, I never donate to candidates, but I'm sending you some money.
What was her reason?
Because of the entire program that she saw on the website. So,
and you got a good program on the website. The website is?
JohnCarlevale.com.
Okay, JohnCarlevale.com. Here's the thing. I think you make some really good points about some really big issues. Talk to me about the CON, as it's known, the Constitutional Convention. You support the idea to have one, correct?
I absolutely do, and Nellie Gorbea does not. She has expressed the idea that any recommendations for changing the Constitution should come from the General Assembly. Well, it took us 52 years to get rid of the master lever. However, we still have to live with it during this general election. And if you think about it, I wonder how long it would take us to get a line item veto for the governor, term limits for legislators, and any number of things if they were to emanate only from the General Assembly. The Constitution provides this provision to allow people, citizens, to make suggestions for changes to its Constitution. It's elegant
explain everybody
and
how it
it's
works.
exquisite.
Yeah, because you're a scholar of this stuff, and I know, but I'd rather have you take the floor. There are delegates to the convention. There's discussion at the convention. There are decisions, and out of the convention comes X number of things that go to the ballot that would have to be ratified or voted upon by the people, correct?
Absolutely. So the first thing is that voters of this state have to approve question number 3, shall we have a constitutional convention?
Right.
Or some wording to that effect. And if the voters approve, then we begin the process of laying out the ground rules for holding a constitutional convention, electing delegates to that convention.
How many do we elect?
We elect 75 because there are 75 representative districts. And the good news is, Dan, that because of the sanction against, excuse me, dual office holding, sitting legislators will not be able to run as delegates. So
It would be fascinating. However, the people said no last time.
they did.
Right. So we'll see. When we come back, a couple of other issues, including how candidates appear on the ballot. John's got a creative idea for that one. Stay with us. Welcome back in. John Carlevale is my guest. He is a candidate for Secretary of State and a television producer. Give us 30 seconds on that so everybody knows what you've been doing.
I produced the television show called State of the State, and the website is stateofthestateri.com. It has broadcast information, and our programs are archived on a video channel. So
It's a labor of
please
love
visit.
for you, right? It's a labor of love for you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. You're very concerned about good government stuff.
I am, yeah.
So it's got to be weird to come out from behind the guy who's just concerned about showcasing government to be a guy who's running for a position in government. But you were really compelled on this voter ID thing, correct? This
Yes,
is the
I
one
was.
that made you move. So you got to go to his website, folks, because there's a civics lesson inside the website. There are too many things, too many issues, too many topics that are there that I don't think enough people actually ever think about, let alone be able to explain them by themselves, right? Our acumen right now for voting laws, the way government works, all that kind of stuff is at an all-time low in my instinctive judgment3 Yours?
Yes, it is, Dan. And of course, this is not new to me because in 1994, I and 3 other plaintiffs, identified 155 Rhode Island election laws that violate one or more of our constitutional rights. And that case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
And the result?
And the result was that the United States Supreme Court, after deliberating for 9 months, decided not to hear it. So where does one go for justice?
Give me a highlight of one of the complaints.
Well, for example, this is one that everyone gets. Now, this goes back to 1994. The law has been changed somewhat. But in order for a Democrat or Republican gubernatorial candidate to receive matching funds, he has to do this, 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 and this. Now, the independent candidate for governor has to do this, 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 and this, and this, and this, and this. So it's hardly equal protection under the law.
Speaking of equal protection or equal competition, you've got a better idea, I think, about how to put names on the ballot. Tell us.
Well, as we do it now, there is this lottery ball toss, and based upon the toss, a member of a party is placed first, and then another party is placed second. So, for example, a Democrat might be first, a moderate might be second, a Republican might be third, and that order is retained throughout the ballot. My recommendation is that ballot position for candidates should be determined by random selection for each and every position, so that we determine position for governor, then we go to lieutenant governor, and again we do a random selection, And in this instance, maybe a Republican lieutenant governor will be first, and a Democrat lieutenant governor will be second.
We have a large enough budget to get enough balls to throw up in the air?
Oh, sure, you can do it with random numbers, Dan.
Well, you know what? The habit of voting is just so lazy and some might say corrupt in nature. And even this Secretary of State, Ralph Malus, could have been a hero and put the master lever that has just one more election year in it at the bottom as opposed to on the top. But he chose not to and took a pass on that. You would do that as Secretary of State?
I would have done that.
You would have done that. Give me 30 seconds on what it is that people need to know about the Secretary of State's office and why you ought to be there.
Well, Dan, it's an important office in terms of elections. And one of my big concerns is that Rhode Islanders have been dumbed down. When I went to school, I had civics as part of my curriculum. We no longer have civics in public schools. And one of my passions and devotions is to restore civics education to public schools. Then I would take it a step further, Dan, and apply a civics education under the aegis of the Secretary of State's office to adults.
All right, and we'll elaborate next Election Day. We'll get more on the radio, too. Good to see you. John Carlevale, running for Secretary of State. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. This is how you get in touch with us, your state of mind. Give us a voicemail at 228-1886. That'd be 228-1886. stateofmind@myritv.com is the email. Facebook post, tweet at us. I overstepped my time with John Carlevale. He's so enthralled with his ideas for Secretary of State, so I'm out of time. So I got to go, but we'll do it tomorrow or Wednesday. New England Tech tomorrow. Really great program. See you on the radio at noon. Good night.